I'll go ahead and introduce you, Deborah, if you don't mind, since I've had the pleasure of knowing you since 2012 at TESOL Philadelphia, and speaking to you then and recording a couple of podcasts. Those podcasts have been used a lot since, especially by participants in our leadership training, our technology leadership, and they've inspired a lot of people and given us lots of food for thought. So for those of you who don't know, Dr. Healey teaches TESOL at the University of Oregon. She's published extensively on learning technology, and she's one of the co-authors of the TESOL technology standards, which have guided the Avenue Learn IT to Teach project. And she's a past settlement language teacher herself. So Deborah, over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being here. I am delighted to be here. It's always interesting to be referred to as Dr. Healey. It's something that I would do with my students when they were adult students, when they were being particularly fractious at the university, but normally I'm Deborah. So please do feel free to call me Deborah. Let me start my screen and get us going. I think this is a topic that is important to all of us because we've seen a whole lot of change and it's been, as we know, pretty crazy. The one good thing about this is that we are all quite familiar with technology glitches. And when you can't start on time, we just sort of go, okay, another special event from whatever technology we're using. So, what you'll see here, you see my email, you also see my website. There are a lot more resources on my website. So what I'm going to do is talk about a few things related to how you can build community and make learning memorable, especially online, because that's really, what's difficult for all of us is dealing with the online reality that we're dealing with today. So how many of you have felt like this? Especially at the beginning of suddenly what they call emergency remote learning. We wouldn't call it online instruction because everybody was scrambling so badly. So if this has been you at some point or another, feel free to add in the chat the yes, it's been me. If not, wonderful, you've had a way better time than most people with it. So as part of this talk, I do expect a certain amount of activity on your part in the chat and doing different things. Part of the reason for this is to show ways that you can work with your online learners and have a bit of modeling of what this would look like, if you're doing this with your learners. So we've all been there. Okay, the audio stopped working during online class. Yeah, I mean, it's something that it happens. And as we realized at the start of this webinar, it happens. And so part of it is trying to take it in stride. And that's part of what makes us a little more resilient as teachers. But of course, you notice this was painted in 1893, so some things don't change much. This is the plan for today. I'm going to talk a bit about how we can share with others to build community online, a few tools, some online and hybrid pluses, including flipped learning ideas, a few of the many challenges to overcome, and then some insights from TESOL's 6 principles for exemplary teaching of English learners, and then some thoughts from you as we close. But as I mentioned before, please do feel free to be posting in the chat. I'll answer questions in the chat as I can, but we will have time at the end for Q&A. So consistent with this idea of let's share, I'd like you to go ahead and use Padlet. I don't know if I hope you're familiar with this. It's a lovely tool, and share at least one insight or surprise from your pandemic experience. Paul has posted the link in the chat. You have a QR code here that you can shoot. So if you would like to use the QR code, I'll leave this up for a little bit, and then I will move over to the Padlet.
Recording.
Okay. Everybody's got it. You've got the link in the chat, so you can look at that. And let me go back and get to the Padlet. So in the Padlet, what you're going to do is you're going to click on the plus and add something. This is set up so that you can do it by categories, which is, an interesting way to do it. You can also comment on somebody else's little post-it note. So it's something that allows you to organize the way that people respond in what's otherwise, other kinds of Padlets that you'll see later. You can post anywhere, but this is really set up to be more of this going in this kind of vertical way. Okay, you see resilient people. Oh yeah, resilience is definitely something that we have seen. It's great that Avenue training is really really helpful with this. If you want to add your name to this, you can. You notice these are set up as anonymous. If you wish to be anonymous, you can choose that as the teacher. If you've used Padlet, you can set so that you know who's saying what, or you can leave it so that people don't have to say their names as part of it. And it depends on the kinds of questions you're asking. If you want to ask more sensitive questions and have people share, then anonymous is better. Something like this, it would be probably fine with names on them, but you can choose. So this is just, a different way of using interaction within an online course. Now, the thing that I like about Padlet, like just about everything that I'm going to show you, is it's free to teachers. The free version doesn't let you have unlimited Padlets, but you can get rid of an old one and add a new one. Or you can buy a subscription that lets you do as many Padlets as you like. It's not an expensive tool. It's also not a high bandwidth tool. So it's something that people can use even if they're not on really good connections. I've seen it used with African teachers where you definitely don't have good connections. So it's something that people can do on their phones or here, or on a computer, on a big screen or whatever. So we have some lovely stuff here. The Padlets will persist. So if you're watching the recording and you want to try the Padlet, feel free. You can add your comments to it from the recording as well and see what other people have written. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my talk now and okay. All right, so thank you for sharing. This was very good. Yeah. Oh, somebody got grandfathered in, and got a lot of Padlets. This is great. Another thing that I'm sure you have your collection as well. These are some fun Zoom icebreakers, and there are some that you can do with even really low-level people. And in fact, even people who aren't particularly literate, you can do some of these icebreakers. The idea is you're in this online environment. And of course, these are things you could do in a face-to-face class as well. But online, these work really pretty well because you can have people do them when they are, just sort of separately on the screen. So something like show and tell, where people can say, oh, here's what I have, and especially if you encourage them to share something that's important to them or something that a member of their family made. And you don't need to have them give a lot of detail. If they have less language, they can use less language in describing it. But part of this is building the sense of community. The one, I really like these 6 adjectives, nouns, verbs that describe me. You can choose the number. You can choose whether they're adjectives, nouns, or verbs, depending on what you think your learners will be able to do well with. Often adjectives are pretty easy for lower level learners, and they can be helping each other out as they're doing this. So it's a fun thing to do. It's a language builder, but it's also a little bit about yourself, so that people can start to really use this idea of, you know, what I can say about myself, how I share about myself with others, even online. I don't know if you guys have done scavenger hunts, tremendous fun. They can be things, again, related to your language activities. They can be very low level. Find something blue, find something that's made with flour, find some, you know, so that they can be things that fit what you're doing with your class, fit your language goals, but also be interesting. Of course, with a scavenger hunt, you want to make sure that all of your learners will have something that will work with this. If by chance you have learners who may be unhoused, homeless learners, then you'll want to limit your scavenger hunt to things that they are likely to have. But most people have certain kinds of things. And if you have it broad enough, like with a color, then people are often able to come up with things to share. So then they are showing what they've got. You can do it so that the first one done gets, you know, wins, or just have it be a sharing opportunity. A very fun thing to do with learners at any level. Of course, if you have more advanced learners who have more resources, you know, your scavenger hunt can get a lot more complicated, of course. An intermediate kind of thing would be 2 truths and a lie, where people are saying 2 truths and a lie, and people have to guess what the lie is. You can have them vote in chat if you're using something on Zoom, or if you're face-to-face, obviously, you're using, you know, people can raise their hand for A, B, or C, which one was the lie. But it's also a fun thing because it allows people to be creative about themselves, and it allows them to share what they're willing to share, and, you know, and to make something up. It's sort of fun to say that. And you learn the most amazing things about what people have done or been or whatever if you do this. And then, of course, a more advanced would be a would you rather kind of activity. And, you know, would you rather is like, would you rather be poor and happy, or rich and unhappy? Would you rather lose your wallet or lose your keys? I mean, this one is, you know, working on certain language functions, but also much more advanced level of language. But it's something that people can do. And you could have people work in breakout rooms with the would you rather, with any of these, in fact, and come back and tell the group what was most interesting. So those are a few Zoom icebreakers. There, I have a resource list that you'll have access to after the talk, and it's got a whole bunch of things about this on it. The next thing I'd like to talk a little bit about is psychology. And this is one of those things. If you get, for example, some mail that's saying, you know, join now, take this, you know, paste this yes in this spot and send it back to us. That's the personal commitment. And people who want to sell you stuff do it, because if you say or you do something that says I'm committed to X, you're way more likely to do it. And so with our own learners, we can ask them to say or write what aspect of the course, what goal they're committed to. It doesn't have to be big. it can be a small level, but by saying it publicly, by sharing it publicly, then the community is better able to help them, you're better able to help them, and they're more committed to actually doing this. And with online learning, we know how hard it is for people to stick with it and come back and keep doing it. So it's a really simple thing. And you do it in the first couple of classes that you have, first couple of sessions. And it helps people really feel like they're committed, they've got a goal, and helps everybody help them as well. The other thing I really like is storytelling, because when you're telling stories, you're being creative, you're talking about yourself, but in a creative way. It gives you a lot of options about how you might do things. And you don't have to tell the truth, which is even more fun in many respects. Sort of like two truths and a lie, there's something very fun about saying things that aren't true. But you can also do things that are true. And I've got a couple of places here that I'll suggest to you. Make Beliefs Comics is a great comic creator. It gives you a lot of scaffolding in the form of characters and backgrounds and different things that you can add, and there are little sounds that you can throw in there. It's all text, but like a comic strip. What learners add are the thought bubbles and the speech bubbles. So there's a little bit of language. This is a lovely thing for people to work on and share with each other. So very fun thing to do, and easy, and of course, free. So they can be a maximum of 18 panels. So the people who are really into graphic novels can get into it. But even if you aren't, it's kind of addictive. I have to not do it because otherwise I'm sitting there for hours doing Make Beliefs comics. So it's useful because any adult can, well, any age can do this. And the amount of language is entirely up to the learner. And so as the teacher, you can ask for certain kinds of things. You say, please, do use at least X number of words in your comic, but you choose what's appropriate for your learners. And even people who don't have a lot of literacy can figure out by looking at the things what they are and how to drag them onto the screen to make a comic. Story Center is a lovely place for digital stories, for things that you might want to use in class as examples. This is from the community theme. Most of the ones in the community theme are people who are language learners, who are immigrants or refugees, and they have several other themes as well. But you can see what people can do with a digital story. You can also, on this, in Story Center, add your own story. So people who do write and can share their own stories if they wish. The thing that as someone mentioned in the chat, you might not want to ask your students to lie or do other things. That's why you need to think about what works for your learners, what's best for them, how much you want them to reveal, how much they shouldn't have to reveal. So, and especially with adult learners, with adult refugees and immigrants, you do want to be very careful about what you choose. However, things like sharing, like you share a thing where they're show and tell, that's usually pretty easy for people to do at and to be more private in what they choose to share. So very good point that you don't want, you have to use your judgment in what you do. Let me move on now to, that was a few things for getting people to share in different ways. Let me move on to some of the things that actually have been good about going online and doing hybrid kinds of things. What we've found with our language learners over time, not just right now, but over time, is that when you have people who are learning the language and you ask them, respond right now, in a, say, in a face-to-face situation, it's often hard. I mean, that's why we do things like think, pair, share to build our ability to speak. With an online class with asynchronous online discussion, then they have time to think. They have time, if they're doing a reading beforehand, if they're more advanced, they have time to think and write and not have to be speaking immediately. Some of your learners may love to talk, and for them it's no problem, but for most of my students, they needed a little time to think about what they wanted to say, especially people who are more correctness oriented. Some people are, and for them, having the ability to think, to check, and then to write, or if you're using something like Flipgrid to record, then it's really good for them. We've also used a bunch of collaborative sites during this. When I'm doing, for example, a webinar, and I have more time, ahead of time for people to know about it, I can set up Google Slides so that each group in a breakout group is working off the same Google slide deck. So for your learners in breakout rooms, part of the problem is that you can't be everywhere. But if you're using a single Google slide deck and different groups have different slides to add information to, you're getting one shared document from everybody. And they can see what each other is doing, and you can see what they're doing. So I really like something like Google Slides in breakout rooms. And then Google Docs is just a great way for people to share ideas online in real time, or not in real time, because of course you can use the docs and slides asynchronously as well as in real time. Then we got a couple of projects, Webquests, a couple of things related to project-based learning that I'll talk a little more about, and a bit on flipped learning. So I don't know how many of you have used Webquests. If you've ever used a Webquest, please type yes in the chat, because it's a great way to go. Yeah, Jamboards is another great tool. So I like Webquests because it's project-based learning and it's very structured. It's structured for the teacher and it's structured for the learner. And here's this other advantage with online. If you're asking people to do a project and you're doing a lot of explanation in class, everybody's going to be going, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And about 2 people out of 20 are actually going to understand and remember. But if you're doing it online like this, all of the information is there and accessible to people. They can look at it, they can see what they need to do, and they can share with each other online. This one happens to be a Google site template. So you've got the introduction where you say, welcome to this, here's the goal, the task where you're being specific, here's what you're expected to do, and they can read it later. You have a process, and this is the one that's especially useful to have in this kind of format because it stays there and they can look back at it and understand what they're supposed to do, especially if you have learners who are in and out. Maybe they don't come every class, maybe they come every other class, or they come for a week and then they don't show up for 2 days. With this, they can stay caught up. They can look at it and say, okay, that's right, that's what I'm supposed to do, and do it, as opposed to going, oh, I missed class where they explained it, I don't know, I'm not gonna do it. And as we know, our learners are often people who have many other demands on their time and who want the flexibility of coming in and doing the work when they can do the work. The resource list is another thing I want to touch on here, because unless you are teaching how to do a web search, you don't want your learners just be spending all their time searching the web for stuff. You want them to have a list and go for it and just use it. So if they are lower proficiency, they definitely need more details. Now, this, of course, assumes that you have learners who are literate. If you have learners who are not, they might be able to work with others who are literate to do this, but it's maybe not the kind of project that you want to do with people just beginning literacy, because it's a little more detailed than what your newly literate people or pre-literate people may be able to do. And then, of course, an evaluation. Adults need to know what's good. They need to know not the grade they're going to get, but most people want to do well. And if you tell them how to do well, it's comforting. They feel better and they are much more likely to do well. So you start with something that says, and here's what I expect. Here's the evaluation. Here are the characteristics. Here's what excellent looks like, average looks like, and weak looks like. So a great thing to do. And like I said, I like Webquests. You can use Google Sites. You can use Zunal, Quest Garden. There are several others. And I mentioned them in the resource list. Iron is a wonderful global projects site. So if you and your learners are, interested in doing something with people around the world, these are young learners that are pictured here, but Iron has adults that are working together. These are global projects, and Iron isn't necessarily English language learners. It's people all over the world. So there are a bunch of projects that you can do. You can also, if you want to have a single class that you correspond with or do things with, you can set it up through Iron. They've been going for, I don't know, decades, and it's a wonderful group and a free site that gives you a lot of good possibilities. I'm going to have you answer the poll here as our next step before we go into flipped learning. Have you flipped your classroom? Now, hopefully, Paul will stick a poll up here. Yes. If you don't see the poll on your screen, go ahead and answer in the chat. But so have you flipped your classroom? Yes, a lot. I've tried it. Or what's flipping? Again. Okay, let's see some answers. And it's okay to say no. It's okay to say you're not doing it. Varying degrees of success, yeah. Okay, because we're a little limited on time, I'm going to go on from this. So we have, a lot. I've tried it, and what's flipping? Okay, so we have a variety of things. You can go ahead and click on close to close the poll if you want. This is an example in a way of flipping where we start you thinking about it. We're activating schema before we start into the concept of flipped learning. So flipped learning is something that is done really regularly online, because especially asynchronous classes online, where you have instruction outside class, you're building schema, you're having people look at things so that they start thinking about the concept you want them to work on. You can have very short videos, 3 to 5 minute videos, really short, work fine. Flipgrid, but use your phone. If the teacher is doing the video, it doesn't have to be perfect. People like seeing us. They like seeing their teacher on the video, and it can be really not wonderful. As long as it's understandable and clear, it's a way of explaining things, and it's got to be short. You have this little short chunk of something that you're explaining about the concept or about the project, about the process they're going to do in class together. And you can have discussion questions that start them thinking, or discussion questions related to a reading, so that they're then ready when they get to class. They do things. They have demos and role plays, a deeper discussion. You answer their questions. you review work. Now, of course, the class can be online or blended. And if you're doing a blended class, the outside class is going to be the online work, and in class will be the face-to-face area that you're going to be working on. So it's a really nice tool. There are 4 pillars of this: flexible environment. You choose the place and the time for different activities. The learning culture is this idea that everybody's learning, we're learning together, that the point is to learn. The point isn't to use technology, the point is to learn. And intentional content, the teachers choosing the content, which goes into the 4th one, professional educators. Flipped learning isn't about students teaching each other. It's about the teacher making very deliberate choices about what will work for the people in his or her class. So if your learners are beginners, you're choosing the things. If they're more advanced, you're choosing the things that you want them to do without the group and things with the group. And again, if you have things that are posted online, you have the ability of your adult learners to go online when they can. Early morning, late night, lunch break, so that they can do what they need to do to be prepared for their class whenever it works for them. And that's really important for our adult learners. This is a nice little piece from Helene Marshall. She has some great sites, and they're on my resource list, about the different kinds of things that ESL, EFL teachers can do outside of class. Her big thing is the things that you do online, but not when you're synchronous online, so that not when you're all together online. And so the things before you're together online would be authentic samples. TED Talks, if they're really advanced, the 3-minute videos, if they're not, which are your explanations, and 3 to 5 minutes, nothing longer than that. Practice exercises, the low-level skills, the listening passages, and again, having listening done outside means that people can listen as often as they need to when they have time. You know, not just in class when maybe they're rushing from work, they show up in your class, they're tired, they're hungry. You want them listening and doing this work when they're not hungry and tired. Then peer work, and that they can do outside of class, and teacher talk, directions. So these are a few things that you can do outside of your together time, and that people can do on their own time. So of course, you've got the video tools for this: cell phone camera, Flipgrid, Jamboard. Screencasting is something I won't go into detail with, but if you ever want to show people how to do something that's on the computer, you want screencasting. Screencastify gives you 5 minutes free. Screencast-O-Matic gives you 15 minutes for free, or you can, pay for these and get a longer time. But this is the best way to explain how to do something on the computer. All right. Of course, we have had many challenges in being online, and here you have another option to share your ideas with each other. In this, you can shoot the QR code, or you can use the link in the chat to talk about the things that have been challenges for you. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about challenges and responses to them. So let me stop sharing, go back and start sharing again. Here's where, is technology been a challenge for you? You can, in this case, you can either add a comment to what's here in there, add a comment, or you can click on the plus sign in the bottom right corner, or double click just to add your comment anywhere. Again, this is Padlet, a free tool, excuse me. And you can, this is a different format from the previous one because you can post anywhere. So you can either comment on one of these questions, or you can just double click and stick your post anywhere. Yeah, troubleshooting with students online. Oh man, what a pain. Yeah. Again, this is where if you know ahead of time, you can have some screencasts of how to fix things that show them how to fix things, but then they have to be online in order to do that. But getting students enrolled on Avenue, yeah, another technology issue. Different devices. Oh yeah, there are all sorts of things. Yeah, because you can't know all the different tools that your students are using, all the different devices. It is pretty crazy. In schools where they give everybody Chromebooks, that's really nice, because then the teacher knows that everybody's got Chromebooks. You know, and oh yeah, if people use somebody else's Zoom account, who are you? That's a really interesting one. Yeah. So these are different kinds of challenges that that you might have, and you know that it's good to share ideas about. So because of the time, I'm going to shift back more quickly than I would otherwise. Yeah, people miss out on interactions if they don't show up for live classes. Okay. All right, so a variety of different things that affect our ability to teach online. So let me go back and back here. So I'm going to offer you a few tech suggestions. Something like Kathy Schrock's Bloomin Apps, I'm going to show that a little bit later, is really helpful because it has the similar apps on Apple, the iOS, Android, Google Chrome, and on the web, so that you can choose an app that might actually work across different devices. Maybe not quite the same, but it works across different devices. The other thing I'd suggest is really think about asking your learners what they do online. Where do they go? What's their social media of choice? If they're into Facebook, you can do a Facebook group as another way of building community and interacting with them. If they're on WhatsApp, which is something that's common in many other parts of the world, then you use WhatsApp and you can have WhatsApp groups. So it's good to think about how you can use where they are in order to give them more choices, give them more tools to use, and to share information with them. And of course, many webinars for training. Avenue Learn IT to Teach is one that you guys have here, which is great. Oh, what a wonderful tip in the chat. You can transform older laptops into Chromebooks with Neverware. Good to know. Okay, you guys can try to hit up Matthias for how to do that later on. HyFlex, this is the hybrid, and where you are in the classroom physically and you have learners virtually at the same time. Administrators have thought of this as a wonderful thing. I think of this as a horror for teachers, because what you need to do this well, the simultaneous virtual and face-to-face, is a classroom with a big screen where you can see everybody. It's having tools where remote people can see your local, so different kinds of cameras. You need stuff, and you need help, and you need more money to do it. So you can do it in 2 sessions, one face-to-face, one virtual, if you want to do it that way. But what you really need is to get your administrators to understand that this is not the ideal way. Again, it's something that you can do, but I think the toll that it takes on us as teachers is very high. In the resource list, I've got some examples of research of suggestions for HyFlex that say why you need equipment, you need help, you need money if you're expected to teach this way. Stress. Okay, we've been sharing. As one way of dealing with stress is to share with others that you're not alone. Mindfulness techniques, yoga helps. Yeah, Zoom, again, yeah, one of the important things for yourself and your learners, teaching your learners some mindfulness techniques, really encouraging them to feel part of a community. These can help your learners as well as yourself. And taking breaks. I mean, as teachers, we often drive ourselves, oh, we've got to do this, we've got to help our students, we've got to do everything. Well, when you're online, it's hard. It's, it's very taxing. This is a photo of something in British Columbia, and your little quiz is, if you know where this is, you can type it in the chat. But the idea of a break, you can share a beautiful picture with your learners and say, let's take a 2-minute beauty break. Bring the stress level down, yours and theirs. And so it's a nice technique to use to try to say, yeah, we can relax for a moment before we go on. My last piece that I'm going to talk about is the TESOL 6 Principles for Exemplary Teaching of English Learner. I love the graphic here where you've got the learners in the middle and the community of practice around the outside. This cycles back to a lot of the things I've been talking about. The first one, to know your learners, find out who they are. Google Forms can work for this, or the Zoom interactions, or the other kinds of sharing that we were talking about earlier, because you want to build on their strengths. This is also where that idea of getting the commitment, the personal commitment, tells you a bit about their goals. And that way, you have a sense of who they are. You want to create conditions for language learning. As we talked about before, a learning environment that's rich with quality materials where people can be interacting with each other. This is all very important. And again, some of the stuff that we talked about before is this. If you're familiar with the community of inquiry model, this is a very common one in online teaching. It says you need 3 presences in order to really have an effective educational experience. The social presence, where you feel that you are there and that you're with others, that you're sharing yourself with others. The cognitive presence, there's something to be learned, that there is something that you need to be doing. And the teaching presence, which is the sense that the teacher's there and cares about you. It doesn't have to be physically there all the time, but where you have a sense that you're getting these little 3-minute videos from your teacher. That's a strong sense of teaching presence. And by having all 3 of these presences, you are more likely to have an effective online learning situation for language and anything. The high quality language lessons, as we all know, clear outcomes are even more important online. When you're in a class, you can sort of see, do people understand? Do they get it? Are they, am I going where I want them to go? But if you're not seeing them, or if you're not seeing them except on tiny little boxes, you need to have your outcomes very clearly stated, where they can find them, where they can go back to them, and where you can go back to them. The scaffolding, again, good curriculum and materials and assessments. So let me show you, this is the Android list from Bloomin Apps. So it's done by the revised Bloom taxonomy from recognition, understanding, remembering, understanding, application, analysis, evaluation, and creativity, and different apps that you can use. And as I said before, she's got a list by iOS, by Android, by Chrome, Google, and websites. So you can find something that might work across the platforms that your students are using. Adapting the lesson delivery, of course, this is, again, differentiated learning. The flipped classroom is really good for this as you're thinking about what is it that you want to do together? What is it that you want to do separately? And really thinking about that. I'm going to mention a couple of other fun stuff. I don't know if any of you use Breaking News English. This is a very fun website and hugely useful for teachers because each lesson has multiple levels. This is, I think, from a couple of days ago. The news is sort of fun news. It's usually not horribly depressing news that he gets into. So you've got different levels. You've got a lesson plan for the teacher, which can be a very long one. You have North American and British English, things to listen to, things to read, grammar activities, spelling, vocabulary activities, all sorts of stuff. But as the teacher, you need to select. You need to say, here are the things, here is the level that will work for you and what will work for you and what will work for you. So that you really can choose things. I mean, you choose a topic. If you have lower level people, that tends toward the low. If you have more advanced learners, you maybe choose a topic that tends toward the higher levels. But the amount of work that has gone into this website is phenomenal, and it's free. I am very happy to tell people about it because it saves us as teachers huge amounts of time. You've got pre-listening, pre-reading activities, you've got everything in here, and it's wonderful. Because he does it, you don't need to. And you select, and which is a wonderful thing. We don't need to be creating everything. We can use our judgment and tie the specific things to our specific learners. A word about Google Translate and other translation tools. I would bet some serious money that many, if not most of your learners who have any level of language at all are well aware of translation tools, of Google Translate. So if you want to, let them know that you know about Google Translate, this is a good idea. And you can show them how they can use it to help them. For example, if they want to look at, say, a website or something and get a sense of it in their language and then go into English, the key is making sure that you have an output, you have something, an activity that they need to do that needs English. So if you have them explain what they read about in English in class, then whatever language they read about at first, they will quickly realize that it's helpful to also read it in English in order to have the words that I need in order to speak. So the key is not keeping them from using translation. It's showing them how to use it effectively and expecting them to use it to prepare so that the activity that they do is in English. It also is really helpful for them if they're trying to do, if they've got the Google Translate on their phone, they can use it to take a picture of a whole bunch of different languages and translate it into their language or into English. So if they want to explain about this special tea that they have from China, they can shoot the text in Chinese, it'll translate it into English if you ask it to, and then they can speak in English about this fabulous tea that they brought from home. So different things, different ways of using the translate that, remember, you just want the output. You want what they're doing to be in English. Of course, monitoring and assessment are part of our job. You've got a couple of really fun tools, many fun tools for ongoing assessment. You're going to give feedback. Shared responsibility is where you're having people working in groups, having them do some peer assessment and peer evaluation. And then summative with rubrics and potentially ePortfolios. I suspect many of you have used Kahoot. This is very fun when you're working, when it's sort of the time and competition and very helpful stuff. You can choose things that are ready-made, or you can create your own. Good point from Iman that it doesn't include all the languages. I mean, it's getting better. It's got like 80 plus languages, but not everything is there. Hopefully, though, you can have somebody who will find a language that can be an intermediate language and help people use the translation tool in some way. Quizlet is another example of something for formative quizzing. Transitive verbs is this example here, but you've always got flashcards, learn, write, spell, test, match, and gravity is a shoot 'em up, where you have to shoot the answer as it falls. Sort of asteroids kind of thing. So these things are fun. They are formative. You aren't going to do your high stakes testing with Kahoot or Quizlet or other things. There are many other things that are similar to this. ESL video is the other one I'll mention. You can use any YouTube video and create multiple choice questions to work with it. Or you can find one that already has multiple choice questions. So it's not ideal because you only have multiple choice questions. Good to know, America, that students do need an account to get on Quizlet. Yeah, it seems to be a thing that is happening more and more because of security concerns. The groups are requiring accounts. Even if they're free accounts, it just takes a little more time. And of course, Rubistar is a lovely tool if you're doing rubrics. It gives you a grid where here's a sample one where you're choosing from a list of categories, or you create your own. And if you choose one of their categories, it will automatically fill the different descriptors. So it's a great way of looking at how to do something and telling people what is good. I mean, I have a whole lecture I do on rubrics because I think of them as the most useful way you can help learners to do a better job of writing and speaking and projects because they know what they need to do. Eportfolios are another option that we have. I mean, Google Sites has a free ePortfolio tool. Dropbox is a way of sharing. So if people have a Dropbox that's shared with you, the teacher, you can see the things that they're sharing for their ePortfolio. WordPress has lovely ePortfolio templates. So you have a variety of things you can use. This is a sample from a class a few years ago where you can see the folders. So you can put folders and work within folders, and you can see how many times they've revised it. You can see when it was last submitted. So this is with Google, the free Google Site ePortfolio template. So if you have learners who are at the level where they're doing work that you want to evaluate this way, the ePortfolio is a good way to go. It's really quite easy to do. You don't have to use folders. People can just put things on, upload a file, and it's there. And finally, the last principle is to engage and collaborate in a community of practice. I mean, this is what we're doing here. Collaboration with others, as you know, Avenue.ca has Tcell as one way of collaboration. If you're in British Columbia, you've got BC TESOL, you've got the Ontario TESOL, you've got all sorts of things, associations across Canada. And there's also TESOL International Association that offers for free the My TESOL Lounge. So anyone can join the lounge. This is from yesterday or the day before. You can see there are over 5,000 discussion items, a library of 340 things, 110,000 members. The beauty of this is if you have sort of a specific question like, where can I find high quality photo or picture stories? You will get an answer. And you will get several answers, and they'll come really pretty quickly. So it's a very nice way to share information. It's a free registration, and then you can have access to the My TESOL Lounge. A very, very nice way to go for teachers to share with each other. And some final thoughts. While I might not think of lying this way as being particularly comfortable, I mean, we all need a break. I mean, we all need to remember that we've been working like crazy and we need a break, and our students as well. But we're often, as teachers, so intent on helping our learners that we forget that we need to take care of ourselves too. And so I really hope that you will keep in mind this idea of, within your class, stopping for a beauty break, showing something beautiful, letting everybody go, ah, and then resuming, because it helps us all get there. Now, if you have a Google account, you can do this. Google just changed so that you now need to have a Gmail account in order to do this. I used to do this all the time and people just would use the link and log on, but now you need a Gmail account in order to get to this reflection. So if you do have a Gmail account, please go here. Paul's posted it in the chat, or you can shoot the QR code to be able to share some final ideas. This is what it looks like. So if you can't get on or you don't wish to share your ideas, and if you're watching the recording, feel free to share your ideas later too. These are the things that you can talk about in the chat. You know, you can put your comments in the chat. I've really appreciated the comments that people have been putting in the chat. They're, you know, what they're finding, what they've done. There's a nice workaround with that Iman posted about Quizlet, you know, so that I think that, again, if the more that we do to help each other, the better we'll all do, because we will know that we're part of a community, that we're all working together, and that we can all do better working together. So how about if you take a moment, post one thing either in the reflection or in the chat? That would be lovely. So this again has the QR code, and the link is in the chat. I know it's hard. Comics, yeah. No, I love the breaking news, the make-believes comics. It just, anytime I try to make one as a sample, I end up spending way more time on it than I ever imagined. Okay, so anyway, virtual field trips, nice, yeah, nice. So there's a lot of great stuff, but we are running out of time. And so if you have some questions, we can open up for questions. And then we have another maybe half hour or so for breakout rooms, depending on what you would like. So if people want to ask questions now, that's fine. I'm going to stop sharing so that we can see each other. And feel free to ask questions if you have them, or post in a chat, you know. Yeah, I had another tool I was going to show you that I think is really cool called Miro, but you have to have the app to use it. So it would be a nice thing to use in a class, because it's like an infinite whiteboard. It just keeps expanding, and you can have a free one. You know, some of them are free, so you know, or you can have a certain number for free, and then you have to pay if you want to have more whiteboards. But yeah, I think one of our challenges is always that we've got technology changing around us. We think we know something, and then oops, like as we saw today, oh, it just changed. It's not working. But again, I mean, this is where I think we have to be kind to ourselves and to say, you know, things happen. You go with the flow. You have a plan B if possible, or you just figure that we've all been there. We all know what it's like to have something not work when we want it to work. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. I think that, you know, you're doing wonderful work with learners who are facing so many personal challenges as adult learners. I know that I was so impressed when I was teaching a pronunciation class from 7 to 10 at night. And these were people who had reached the point in their careers. They were sort of first wave, second wave Vietnamese refugees coming into the United States at the time. And they couldn't advance in their careers because their pronunciation was, in many cases, unintelligible. And that they would work a full day and then come for 3 hours of pronunciation. I mean, I was so impressed. I couldn't believe that, you know, people could be that dedicated to do it. And that's what our learners are like. They are wonderful people, truly dedicated to improving themselves, improving their lives and their families' lives. So thank you for doing this work. All right. So would people like to do breakout rooms? We could. What do you think, Paul?
I was just thinking if people would like to ask questions via microphone, feel free to do that. There's a few people have said that they need to leave, so we're down to about 16 participants.
Oh yeah, let's just stay in the room then.
Just have a big group chat here, if that's okay
yeah,
with you, Dr.
I think
Healy?
that would be great.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
This has been great. And just while people are unmuting if they want or turning on their cameras, to remind you all the resources that Dr. Healy talked about today will be shared in the Teachers Only forum, and the video will be available on YouTube as well.
Yeah, and you can also find the resource list in that final link that I shared, but Paul will be making it, I think, more easily available to you
This is
than we had before.
Classic teachers here. They're all jumping out of the group work.
yeah, well, it's, you know, it is who we are. We don't like doing homework. We don't like doing group work. We sit at the back of the room. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we had said we would end at 10, so I really appreciate the fact that, you know, you're sticking around despite that. There was this question about the teachers who think they can go back to business as usual. You're always going to have some people who are reluctant to change, who are reluctant to see the advantages of change. And you have 2 approaches. One approach is you get enough people who are willing to change that they finally come along. This is the concept of diffusion of innovation. You know, you get the bulk of the people ready to move on, and eventually you get the laggards to come to be part of the program. Otherwise, you wait for them to retire. And then you have change. But I think, though, that it's been difficult, but it also has given us more ideas about ways that we can engage our learners. And the thought that you give people a space to do things in their own time, you know, not in our time, but when they can. And especially if it's a collaborative space, when, who knows, maybe somebody else is up at, you know, midnight working on this, then it becomes really useful for us as teachers, and especially for teachers of adult learners.
This is so true. Robin, would you mind unmuting yourself? You've mentioned a couple times about your SPO. It would be interesting to hear more about that.
Yeah, I would agree. Blended could be the new normal. Robin, I don't hear you.
Looks like she can only type. It sounds like you're being made to go back to face and only face to face, from what I gathered from your comments.
Yeah. You know, that's so hard. You know, if you're forced to go back to face, this is where, you know, one thought would be if your learners are actually using some form of social media, if they're all on Facebook, for example, I don't know how common Facebook is among your learners. A Facebook group is an approach to say, in addition to telling them things in class and maybe putting things on an LMS, on the learning management system, you have a Facebook group. Because if they're on Facebook, the Facebook group doesn't have to show their personal Facebook. It's a separate thing. So they don't have to be your friends. You don't have to be their friends for them to be on a Facebook group. So that's another approach to take to try to work around this. You have to be face-to-face, but still maybe are able to add in a few of the online elements that might be helpful. Yeah, Avenue activities. Yeah, if you're using, the Moodle-based learning management system, I mean, that's it. Think about ways that you can do more with it to help people be able to access what they need to know when they need to know it. Quality of interaction online. Yeah, I think that online learning is always going to be a different kind of interaction. I mean, if you want to brainstorm, it's so much easier to brainstorm with people. I mean, it's just, when I was on the Tcell board, we shifted into virtual meetings. And, it was hard. I mean, there's some things that are really hard to do virtually. I think that, if you can be face-to-face and add in some of the online elements, the blended learning elements, this is the best, because then you can allow people, like I was saying, the Webquests, the kind of project that you can work on when you are available, not just in class, and that everybody can share because, you're all getting on when you can get on. I mean, that's the beauty of that. Fully online is a wonderful thing if you've got a global audience, because that's the only way you're going to do it. But if you can be face-to-face, it's just, you miss so much, when you don't have that. So I think that it's not it's not the same, but if it's what you have, it's what you have. And that's what you do. I've done a lot of teacher training with global courses, and that has to be asynchronous and online, because you can't, if somebody's in Japan and somebody's in Peru, you're not getting together at the same time, But I'm a big fan of face-to-face instruction. Yeah, the other thing that we've gotten out of this is a greater willingness to think about, to allow students to use their devices in class instead of being, oh, don't you dare bring a cell phone to class. It's like, oh yeah, bring your phone. We're going to do stuff on the phone. And so that's been a positive thing. Oh.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Healey. Would anyone else have any questions they'd like to ask or any comments that they would like to make? Now is the time. No?
I just want to say thank you so much. This has really been an invaluable experience. I'm a relatively new teacher online, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to share what you've learned over your years.
Yeah, well, thank you. And, you've got my email, or you can get it from Paul, and my website has a lot of resources, so deborahhealey.com. So you feel free to look at stuff there, and then Paul will be sharing the PDF of my PowerPoint and the resource list. And the Padlets will stay open, so that if you want to go back on and see what other people have written, or for the recorded portion of it, if you're watching the recording, you can contribute and you can read what other people have written too.
Well, Deborah, I wanted to extend a deep bow in your direction and thank you so much for this today. it's really inspiring and very helpful. And we don't have all the participants we expected because it's September and everybody's ramping up for a complicated school year. But this session is recorded, of course. It's going to be archived and available either on our project portal or on the Avenue Teacher Forum, and what is going to continue to resonate with teachers for a long time, I think. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been fun doing this, and the rocky start I felt for Paul. You know, we've all been there. It's like,
Thank you.
okay.
It's funny, I did a meeting yesterday and recorded it. I just clicked record. It was that easy.
Yeah.
Me
Same
too.
Zoom. I don't know what
Something happened overnight, Paul.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, thank you so much for your patience. Really
Okay.
appreciate it, and for your time. That was fascinating. Thank you.
All right, so thank you all. We'll have a good rest of your day, afternoon, whatever it is. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Healy.
Okay.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
again. Bye.